Are Canadians and Americans ethnically the same? On the surface, this feels like a trick question. Fly into Toronto or Vancouver, and the streets look familiar. The cars, the shops, the faces, they all seem comfortably American. But you're hundreds of miles north of the border, driving on King Street in a brand new Ford pickup. Stop the average person on the street in both countries and ask, "Who are you?" You'll get two very different answers. Ask an American, and they might say Irish, Mexican, or Italian. Ask a Canadian, and you'll likely hear English, Scottish, French, or simply Canadian. This is the big lesson here. Ethnic identity isn't just a birth certificate. It's a story we tell ourselves. Canada and the United States share the same continent, the same industries, and the same English language. But when it comes to blood and belonging, these two nations have walked radically different paths. So who is telling the truth? Are we looking at the same tribe split by a line on a map? Or did history and politics create two distinct genetic realities? Let's break down the facts. Chapter 1. Defining the terms, race versus ancestry versus ethnicity. Before we look at any data, we need to agree on what we're actually measuring. Government statistics use three distinct concepts. Race is usually a social construct based on physical traits. The U.S. Census Bureau tracks categories like white, black or African American, Asian, American Indian, and Alaska Native. As of 2025, the U.S. population is about 341.8 million. According to Quick Facts, the non-Hispanic white population is 57.5%, while Hispanic or Latino, any race, is 20.0%. Canada, however, looks at it differently. Statistics Canada tracks visible minorities, persons, excluding Indigenous peoples, who are non-Caucasian in race or non-white in color. This includes South Asian, Chinese, and Black populations. Ethnicity is about shared cultural traits. In the U.S., they ask specifically about Hispanic or Latino origin. Notice, Hispanic isn't a race on the census. You can check white and Hispanic at the same time. About 20% of people do exactly that. Ancestry refers to your familial roots. In the U.S., German or Italian are ancestries. In Canada, Canadian is one of the most reported ancestries, alongside English and Irish. Right away, we see a problem. The U.S. tracks Hispanics as a cultural group regardless of race. Canada does not. It groups Hispanic Canadians into the visible minority category. We aren't comparing apples to apples, but by looking at raw data on origins, we can reconstruct a much clearer picture. Chapter 2. The Old Stock. Colonial Roots. If we rewind to the 18th century, the two populations were practically identical. Both were extensions of Britain and France. The early United States was predominantly English. Settlers from England established the 13 colonies. By 1776, roughly 60% of the population claimed English ancestry, with large minorities of Scots, Irish, and Germans. But the U.S. also had a massive African population, nearly 20% by 1790, brought over through slavery. Canada had a similar loyalist base. After the American Revolution, about 50,000 United Empire loyalists fled north, planting British culture deep into Ontario. But the crucial differentiator was French Canada. Unlike the U.S., which expelled its French population after the French and Indian War, Canada kept them. When the British conquered New France in 1763, they allowed the 70,000 French-speaking settlers to keep their language, religion, and civil law. That population grew in isolation for a century. By 1867, French Canadians made up nearly one-third of the new Dominion of Canada. So, while the U.S. built a melting pot around an English core, Canada sealed a Franco-British partnership with the Quebec Act of 1774. While the U.S. had a massive enslaved African population as a minority, Canada had a large, geographically concentrated French Catholic nation as a founding pillar. Chapter 3. The Melting Pot versus the Mosaic. Immigration Waves. The 19th and 20th centuries massively diluted these founding populations. The American experience, the melting pot. The U.S. pursued aggressive assimilation. The Statue of Liberty welcomed the huddled masses from Ireland, Germany, Italy, and Eastern Europe. Massive waves of Irish and German Catholics altered the religious landscape. By 1900, the typical American was just as likely to be a German-speaking Lutheran from the Midwest as an English Episcopalian from Virginia. This process was designed to homogenize. Immigrants were expected to shed their old-world identities and become Americans. Today, the largest self-identified ancestry groups in the U.S. are German, estimated 15.1%, Irish, 10.8%, and English, around 8.7%. African Americans whose ancestors arrived in chains centuries ago form a distinct ethnic group without a European nation to point to. The national race data reflects a uniquely American structure. Using U.S. Census Bureau Quick Facts and the American Community Survey, the white alone population, including Hispanic ethnicity, is 74.8%. However, the non-Hispanic white alone population is 57.5%. The Black or African American alone population is 13.7%, and Asian alone is 6.7%. The 2024 American Community Survey's 5-year estimates show a multiracial population of 10.71%. The Canadian experience. The Mosaic Canada's model was less aggressive. The British worried that assimilating the French would cause a rebellion, so they accepted cultural duality. Later immigrants from Ukraine, Poland, and Italy were encouraged to retain their heritage, forming ethnic blocs across the prairies. The official policy is multiculturalism, not Americanization. Because Canadians weren't forced to homogenize as aggressively, they tend to hold on to distinct hyphenated identities. When asked their ethnicity, roughly 15.6% of Canadians report Canadian as a single origin, 14.7% English, 12.1% Scottish, 12.1% Irish, and 11.0% French. Compare this to America's ancestry data. While German and Irish are the top reported ancestries in the U.S., the proportion of English is much lower than in Canada because Americans shed the British identity quicker. Meanwhile, Canadian itself is the largest reported group in many parts of Canada. According to the 2021 Canadian Census, the population structure shows panethnic origins: European, 52.5%, and North American, 22.9%. Visible minorities account for 19.3% of the population. Indigenous peoples make up 6.1%. The white population accounts for 69.8%, significantly lower than the white alone population in the United States. Chapter 4, the Quebec exception. To understand the differences, we have to look at one province, Quebec. Step off the plane in Montreal, and you are not in North America as you know it. You've changed ethnic groups entirely. Quebec is a fundamentally different society from the rest of North America. It survived the British conquest and spent the next 200 years building a distinct nation within a nation. By 1971, French Canadians made up nearly 80% of Quebec's population. Today, while immigration has shifted the demographics slightly, the cultural dominance is absolute. Almost 80% of Quebecers speak French at home, versus about 90% of the rest of Canada, excluding Quebec, who speak English. In the 2021 census, the most common ethnic or cultural origins reported in Quebec were Canadian, 29.0%, French, 21.4%, and Quebecois, 11.2%. This concentration of French ancestry and culture has no parallel in the United States. There is no single U.S. state where one non-English founding ethnicity makes up the overwhelming majority of the population. The closest parallel might be Spanish-speaking New Mexico, but even there, the influence is far smaller than French Quebec. Chapter 5, Indigenous Peoples, a Shared Tragedy. Both nations share a foundational relationship with the First Nations. However, the demographic weight is very different. In the United States, Indigenous peoples, American Indians, and Alaska Natives, who identify with one race account for just 1.4% of the population. This population is widely scattered across the West and Alaska. In Canada, Indigenous identity, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, is proportionally much larger, accounting for around 6.1% of the national population. In the Northern Territories, Indigenous peoples are the majority. Why the difference? Canada's Indigenous population has a higher birth rate and, crucially, a more inclusive census method that counts mixed ancestry, Métis. The United States has a similar mixed-race population, but the blood quantum definition historically required for federal recognition often disenrolls members over time. The numbers are closer than they appear, but Canada's First Nations are a more integral part of the nation's ethnic narrative as founding peoples, alongside the French and English. Chapter 6. The Present. A Tale of Two Immigration Pipelines. Right now, the ethnic futures of the US and Canada are diverging rapidly. They are refueling with very different ingredients. The United States is powered by Latin America. The Hispanic or Latino population, any race, is 20.0% of the total. This is America's largest minority group, larger than the entire Black population. Driven by migration from Mexico, Central America, and Puerto Rico, the US is becoming a partially Latin nation. Canada is powered by Asia. Asian Canadians, Chinese, Indian, Filipino, are now the fastest growing demographic. As of 2021, over 7 million people reported Asian origins, 1 in 5 Canadians. South Asians alone make up 7.1% of the population, and Chinese 4.7%. Only about 10% of recent immigrants to Canada are from Europe. Immigration levels also differ vastly. The U.S. foreign-born population is stable at around 14.1%, with recent slowdowns. Canada currently has the highest per capita immigration rate in the G7, with the foreign-born population projected to reach 30% of the total by 2036. Chapter 7. The Verdict. So, are we the same? Let's answer the question. If you define ethnicity as skin color, race, the US and Canada look similar. White people are the majority in both, but America is whiter at 74.8% by census race definitions than Canada at 69.8%. Both are majority white, but just barely. If you define ethnicity as cultural identity, they are very different. America is defined by the Black and Hispanic experience, two large minorities integral to the national fabric. Canada is defined by the French-Canadian-Asian dynamic. If you look at deep ancestry, bloodlines, the plot gets fascinating. Americans who have been in the country for 5 or more generations are overwhelmingly English and German. But due to high intermarriage, the average American has a massive genetic mix. Canadians, because of the Quebec Sea and later immigration timing, are more likely to have a single, identifiable, pure heritage. They are more likely to be Scottish or French on paper than a genetic hybrid. Chapter 8. Conclusion. The big lesson here is that the border between Canada and the US may be invisible on a map, but it acts as a dam for human genetics. The United States built a melting pot. It absorbed millions from the Old World and, despite social strife, created a new generic American genetic type. It is now defined by its Hispanic and African American pillars as much as its European roots. Canada built a multicultural mosaic. It locked in French distinctiveness and plugged itself directly into the Asian pipeline. Canada is defined by its duality, English, French, and its rapidly growing non-European diaspora. Canada is distinct. The presence of a massive, bloodline-distinct French-speaking nation in Quebec, with almost no historical or genetic parallel in the States, makes the ethnic composition of the two nations fundamentally different. Are Americans and Canadians ethnically the same? They share the same base ingredients, but the recipes are completely different. One is a bowl of New England clam chowder, the other is poutine. Very different, but both delicious in their own right. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the ethnic makeup of North America, please like and subscribe. And let us know in the comments, do you feel closer to your neighbor across the ocean or across the street?